I signed her up to stairlift company mailing lists, incontinence pad mailing lists, soft food meals on wheels lists, anything I could find that would be useless and annoying because when my daughter died, she said, surely better age 2 than age 22. Once at work, my Diet Coke kept getting stolen from the communal fridge, so I made a Mentos bomb from a Diet Coke with Mentos in the lid and put it in the fridge. About an hour later, I heard a shriek. This coworker had obviously been the thief, as she was covered in Coke. She couldn't deny it and had to pay me for every bottle she'd ever stolen. I caught my flatmate telling lies about me to some mutual friends. I made plans to move out the next month. In the meantime, she went out of town for a week and left her car parked in its usual spot in the parking lot. I threw birdseed on it every morning and evening so when she came home, the birds wouldn't leave her car alone. I worked at a 50K plus tech company. I worked with a PM, Maggie, who misread my email and got her dates messed up. She scheduled a meeting for Thursday instead of Friday. When I told her she scheduled on the wrong day, she got mad at me and emailed all my managers up to my vice president, 4 levels of management, to say how much of a troublemaker I was. It was her own fault for not being able to read. 2 years later, I have to work with her again, and I pretend like I'm all happy and friends with her. 2 years after that, I quit and move on to a better company. I get an email saying that Maggie is applying to my new company and said I could provide a positive reference for her. I email the recruiter and blast all my 6 years of shit on her and block her from getting hired. Take that, Maggie, you F***er. I never forget. My dad had an old truck parked on the back of our property that some kept stealing small parts from, cap, rotor, points, etc. We wired it to an electric fence power supply. One evening we heard a bunch of yelling and swearing and went back there and the guy left us some free tools. I used to deliver pizza for Domino's. It was my last shift and there was this house that was always rude. I called to ask what the house looked like and they said, I gave you the address and hung up. Never tipped, etc. I got to their house and they gave me a check for 1 cent less than what the total was. I said, I am going to need the extra penny. They grumbled off and took their time hoping I would give up, but I just sat there holding the pizza. They finally came back all pissed off and gave me the penny. Note that they had no intention of tipping. They gave me the penny, and I chucked it out into the street and left. They saw me do it. It was satisfying. My roommate and her SO loved doing elaborate jigsaw puzzles. After I found out she canceled our lease, leaving me 1 week to find a new place to live, I threw away one piece of 2 different puzzles they were working on. Before you ask, she was able to do this because I was 17 and not able to legally sign a lease. I'm a she. Dad was on a boat. Mom was, IDK where that crazy girl was at. I was at a comedy club and got up to use the bathroom, which was directly behind the stage. As I walked back to my table, the comedian on stage waved at the curtain behind him and said, you know, behind this curtain is a one-way mirror. We were all watching you in there. In an uncharacteristic moment of confidence and wit, I turned to him and said, figures, I didn't think they were applauding for you. I have cyclical vomiting syndrome, and it was really acting up one day. My manager already didn't like me and accused me of faking it when I told him I'd been throwing up. He sent me back into the kitchen, so I just waited a few minutes to get nauseous again, walked up to him in front of my other co-workers, and threw up on his shoes. He never questioned me again, and I made sure to get a note from my doctor saying I had to take breaks when I felt nauseous. I was at a Vons in San Diego then, walking toward the only open check stand with a single bottle of soda in my hand. Suddenly, this hoity-toity lady with a cart stacked to the top flew out of one of the aisles like a freight train and cut me off. I'm in a hurry, she said, then looked away like she was annoyed that I'd been born. I looked at the cashier. He rolled his eyes and got to work. 5 minutes later, she's walking out the door, and it's my turn. You're good, says the cashier. I put your soda on her tag. Damn, that felt good. At my previous job, we had separate refrigerators for the different shifts. Our food was constantly being stolen or messed with. One day, my buddy and I decided to make a nice cherry cheesecake out of cooking lard. We finished it off with graham cracker crust and cut a couple of slices out of it since we knew the thief wouldn't be brazen enough to take the first bite. We never found out who the thief was, but we never had to worry about anyone messing with our food ever again. We chose lard as the less harmful alternative to laxatives or the wrong type of pepper. That shit can be extremely dangerous. I doubt whoever tried our cherry grease cake was even able to swallow a bite. My grandmother is 90, but she has always been very accepting of new technology. One time I took her out to lunch with some of her other older lady friends. One woman, Barbara, started off on a speech about cell phones and how she'll never give up her house phone. She eventually went on about not liking new things at all, things not needing to change, and on and on. My sweet, soft-spoken grandmother said, "Well, there was a time when indoor plumbing was new, but I sure don't miss ting in the outhouse, Barb." A classmate in one of my college classes came in late one day. The professor, trying to embarrass him, said, "Thanks for joining us. We were just busy defining female pleasure some." The classmate didn't miss a beat as he responded, "So was I." I don't think the professor ever recovered from. My sister went to a meeting once with two financial advisors. They were both very condescending and snide, which is stupid to do to any client, but my sister is extremely intelligent. She was just new to buying stocks and investing, right? Anyway, after some conversation, they pulled out a standard packet for new clients. It included a sheet for her to write down everything she spent money on and how much in a month. My sister asked them what that sheet was for. They told her that they have clients track their spending every month. So we can tell you where you need to make adjustments for better money management and to have more for investing. My sister couldn't believe her ears. She was a successful adult with minimal debt and thousands of dollars in the bank, yet these two strange men were going to tell her, like she was a child, that she should be spending less on groceries, books, makeup, and whatever else. So she scanned the list and picked out an item. She said to them, "Let me get this straight. You're going to tell me how much money I should be spending on, oh, I don't know, shampoo?" And looked at both their bald heads. She then just got up and left and found another advisor company. I had a coworker who never ever did their work. We all worked as a team, and when we had a deadline, all the work had to be submitted. So she knew if she didn't do it, one of us would have to pick up the slack so we would meet the deadline. We would complain, but she always had a believable excuse or reason. The owner was very hands-off and just let her do whatever she wanted, despite me going to him with proof. So I decided to take revenge. She was not computer savvy at all, so removed Internet Explorer from her desktop and installed an identical icon that, when clicked, would instantly restart the computer. It was so satisfying when she would forget and click it, losing anything that she was working on. She would always grumble and complain about the virus on her computer. I started a new job about 3 weeks later, and when I left, it was still giving her problems. My neighbor allegedly refused to pay the guy who cleared his backyard. He'll be coming home to this gift left in his driveway. I drove by and his car is out in the street. The HOA here fines you for parking in the street. This won't be pretty. My grandfather was a concrete contractor back in the day. He once did a driveway for someone and they refused to pay because they never signed a contract and said they couldn't prove that they ever agreed to pay. Verbal agreement. My grandfather went back the next day with a dump truck and a tractor and proceeded to rip their driveway out and haul the concrete away. The homeowner arrived part of the way through and started hysterically yelling at him to stop or she was going to call the cops. He said he was well within his rights to take back the concrete that he paid for and had receipts to show proof of his ownership of said concrete. It is one of the funniest and pettiest stories I have ever heard in my life.